Welcome to Shaman Sisters Sessions. I'm Katherine Bird. I'm here with Michelle Hawk. And this is episode 137. What is shamanism? We've done 137 episodes, and somehow we've talked about so many things, but we want to go back to the basics. We want to go back to the beginning. And how do Michelle and I even know each other and relate, and how is our work related? And it really has this essence of what is shamanism. And Michelle and I have spent so much time talking about this, thinking about this, living in this, questioning ourselves about it, because it can be a challenging topic, especially for Western people to sit with and be with and to be. So happy to have you, of course, Michelle. Thanks for having this conversation. So let's just get started on it. Like, let's talk about the basics of what is shamanism. What does this even mean when you hear this word? Somebody's maybe Googling, uh, what are we talking about? Give me something, Michelle.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah. We're going back to our roots a little bit here, which is really great. Um, Shamanism is at its core. And let me say also, there's a lot of different stuff out there about what shamanism is, some of which has a very narrow definition, some of which has a broader definition. My understanding of shamanism, according to the studies that I have participated in for over 20 years now, and the many different teachers I have learned from, is that shamanism is a earth-based, animistic, and mediumistic spiritual practice that is ubiquitous to all of humanity, and it shows up in let's call it wisdom keeping cultures, not only indigenous peoples all over the world, globally. And there are many different flavors of shamanic practice, but they all have certain things in common. And that's part of what we're going to talk about today, is what are the things in common that are really universal to shamanic practice.
Okay,
So there are.
so from there, I think we need to unpack back what you're saying. What is animism? Because that's also a word that you might not be familiar with, because
Mhm.
maybe you've heard the word shamanism but not animism. So let's talk about animism first and foremost. Like, what does this mean to you, Michelle?
Animism, yeah. So I want to like pull out two terms that I shared in that definition. I called shamanism an animistic and a mediumistic spiritual practice. So we'll talk about both of those. Animism is the belief in the life of all things, the life force of not only plants and animals and microbes, but also rocks and trees and elements and geologic features, the land itself, the earth herself. And that all things are united and connected through this unifying life force. That is animism. It's in the root of the word anima, like the life, the breath of life. And so animism is this celebration and active relationship, this connection with life in all of its many expressions.
Yeah, life is everything, and everything is life, and life lives everything. In some ways, is another way to look at it, is that life is living through that mountain, and life is living through the soil, life is living through the fire, and that we, as participants in also that life living through us, can have a connection with all other life. And this is foundational and fundamental to shamanic orientation and shamanic practice.
Absolutely. Yeah. And through that, it makes all things possible, because if we look at, well, if all things are alive and all things are connected through that aliveness, then I am connected to all things. I am connected to all beings. And that's part of where the second aspect comes in. So do you want to give us a definition for what does mediumistic mean?
Mediumistic, that's funny. I don't know if there's a very super clear definition, but as a medium that we can communicate, right? The mediumistic part, there's the animistic part, is like, okay, everything is life. And then the mediumistic part is we can communicate with these different forms and ways that life is moving. So through uh, receiving and translating the information from the world, from all of these living things. And that can show up in so many different ways for so many different people, through a knowingness, through sensation, through the physical body, through sight, through visual images, symbols, colors, through sounds and words, receiving information, channeling through to allow words to move through. What else is there? Through taste, through smell, through all of the ways that we can communicate and receive information. And so that is also a fundamental foundational piece of what it means to be in a shamanic practice, is that you're not just accepting that things have life, you're in active communication.
Active communication and functionally purposeful relationship with the myriad of life. And this includes non-corporeal or perhaps discarnate life expressions, right? And so in mediumship, there's also the practice of incorporation and shape-shifting, where the medium or the shaman or the practitioner is bringing energy into their own body. And this might be a doctor spirit or healing spirit or some kind of guide who is coming through the medium to offer a transmission of knowledge, healing, energy, some kind of working through the medium. And so, yeah, absolutely, Kat, I loved your definition about, having this multi-sensory. And, you see the lists of all the clairs out there, like you're clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient. Which clair are you? And people, like, you can have them all. You just got to practice and cultivate those muscles. But yeah, it's more also, I think, than, to me, in my perception, it's more than just receiving information. It's also being an offering and being in this reciprocal relationship, because part of what we practice in shamanism is you're more than just receiving messages from your guides. You're also bringing them in through your work. You're making offerings to them. You're creating a relationship with them to anchor that medicine into your personal energy field so that it can serve in the world. And that's kind of the next layer of what does animism and mediumship make possible. It makes possible the presence of the shaman as the hollow bone to channel these energies through them for the purpose of guidance, illumination, and healing, to be this medicine in their community.
Yeah. I think it's really important, and we have to just underline this piece about reciprocal relationship, because I think that a lot of times when people get into maybe new age communities or thoughts, manifestation, these kinds of things are very often self-referencing. What do I want? What do I need? And if I change myself, my mind, my thoughts, my behaviors, my patterns, then I will receive what I want. And there's not a lot of reciprocation in that actual experience. We are in relationship. We are in communication. We are choosing to have as healthy relationships and relating as we possibly can with the unseen realms, meaning, and unseen, we can go, I can see that mountain, but there's also an unseen aspect, an unseen being of that mountain and that tree, that we are having this relationship that is reciprocal, meaning give and take, that we are acknowledging the life, we are offering to that life our offerings, maybe items, things that we're offering, foods, we're offering water, we're offering service to the life force that we're working with. And we're beginning this healthy relationship that we're having with the unseen realms so that we can have support, protection, that we can have guidance, that we can receive healing, yes, but it's not this very only solely me focused experience. And I think that that's really important for us to underline, because we come from a very consumptive society. And so whenever we start to explore these different kinds of practices and things, we often will continue to inhabit these old mindsets and ways of being.
Mm-hmm. I
So,
love that you're bringing this up, Kat, and that, we're going to talk a little bit more about this in a follow-up episode about practicing shamanism in the modern Western world. And some of what you're speaking to, I think, is really the cultural conditioning that we have in modern Western society that is so antithetical to shamanic practice. And I think part of what you're talking about really is about spiritual maturity. So, keep in mind, like much, and I have a cat who's trying to wipe her face on my microphone. So hopefully that won't make bumpy sounds. So what you're talking about is like the spiritual immaturity of me, my wounds, my process. And again, this is very typical of our modern Western society, modern Western culture. And imagine like a healthy, nurturing parental relationship. During infancy, the parents or the caregivers are, the sole responsible parties, or the primary responsible parties for, the infant is crying, you feed it, right? You hold it, you nourish it without any reciprocity. There is no reciprocity. But as you start to have a toddler, you're teaching them how to say please and thank you, how to ask for things, how to offer gratitude. And there's that very basic level of exchange as the toddler is learning what it's like to be in exchange. And then they become a kid or a teenager, and now they have chores, now they have responsibilities. So, and they're contributing to the family in some way. So there is this growing maturity of the energy exchange, and there's deeper trust, there's deeper responsibility, there's more privileges given of, okay, yes, you can borrow the car, you can stay out late. And then fully mature adulthood, this this responsibility co-creation. And that's part of that spiritual maturity as well, is in shamanic practice, moving from a space of me, my healing journey, I need this, very extractive, perhaps very innocently or naively or unintentionally, staying and really like just not moving past the infancy. But part of shamanic practice, and part of what it means to be a shaman or to practice shamanism really actively as opposed to receiving passively, is about coming into that maturity and that reciprocal generosity and being in contribution to life, to spirit. And there's a lot of ways that looks like.
right. And I think this then cycles back to, you were just saying before, that one of the primary aspects of shamanism is generally that there is service, right? It's not
Mm-hmm.
just, yes, we can have our own shamanic practice that is about our relationships, that is about uh, our journeys or our incorporations with beings, about our experiences, but that it also wants to reach out. There is service to the
Mm-hmm.
community. There is service to others. That once we are able to start to be in that service realm, the practice really does evolve so much. And there's so much that growth that only comes through that service, and it wants to serve. Like
Yeah.
when you connect to all life, and then you're connecting to the unseen realms, and you're asking, okay, like, who am I and what am I supposed to do, and what's the best path forward, you're often
Mm-hmm.
going to get to work.
Yeah,
Be of
it
service.
definitely is a call. And if you're listening to this episode and you're like, I haven't heard that call, or I don't want to work with other people, I'm just cultivating this for me, that's fine. You may or may not experience that call. And what Kat is referring to or talking about is someone stepping into practitionerhood. And there is absolutely deepening initiations and deepening of practice that comes with that. And it's not for everybody. It's, don't feel obligated, but if you are called, and I know a lot of people who tune into our podcast, you are practitioners, you are healers, you are working in service, you are navigating a shamanic awakening, you are studying and practicing shamanism in some way. So you're already in that service, or you're stepping into that service, or you're refining your existing service. Thank you so much for your service. Thank you for saying yes to that call. We know it's hard. Both Kat and I have been there. Both of us are, again, as she mentioned at the beginning of the episode, we question, we navigate. We sometimes our tech goes in and out. There we go. We got it. But we get it. And so we don't take for granted that this path is not for everybody. And if it's for you, welcome. You're in good company. So,
and it doesn't have to be right now. We can also say too, a lot of times people will go to something and they'll experience a ceremony, they'll experience something, and then they're like, oh my gosh, this just opened up the world to me. And you don't necessarily have to be working with people right away. Your shamanic practice can be your shamanic practice forever or for however long. But a lot of times in shamanic practice, we do end up in some way of service. And I will say that sometimes people have very deep shamanic practices and they're not practitioners. Their service can be growing plants, planting trees, doing soil restoration, building community, raising children, right? All of those things are service that are going to be fed and nurtured and influenced by your shamanic practice. So it's not only that, you're a practitioner if you're working with people in a very specific kind of way. Maybe your shamanic practice, you're in ceremony with people, you're praying and receiving and being in community, and that's what that looks like. It doesn't have to look like, oh, now I need to go put up my little red light, people are going to come see me.
Yeah, you don't have to hang out your shingle.
Send out your email blast.
Yeah, no, again, that's a whole other piece that we're going to talk about in a follow-up episode about shamanism in the modern Western world. That is a big part of that. So with this, there's definitely a lot more that we can talk about with what is shamanism and also, what is it not. I do want to add in one other little piece related to what I was sharing at the very beginning of the episode around, people having kind of a narrow understanding of what is shamanism, where does it come from? And one of the very common things that I see people say is that shamanism comes from the Siberian people, and the word shaman comes from the language. Oh my gosh, what is the name of the language? The Tungusic language. You know what I'm talking about, Kat? Is that right? And there are even some people, very well-known people out there talking about shamanism who say, oh, this is the only version of shamanism and anything else is, they're calling it something else. And I think, on one hand, it matters and it doesn't matter. Like, I'm not a jerk for saying this. Like, it's a word. And we know that words are important and they do matter. And also, I think, part of what in my practice has been very important is tuning into the universality of this and honoring that there are people all over the world who have thousands upon thousands of years of practice and devotion in animistic and mediumistic practice in direct relationship with the earth, with the non-corporeal realms, with the spirit realms, with trance states, with all of that. And so, and actually in my lineage, the understanding that I received from my teacher's teacher, etc., is that the word shaman actually comes from ancient Sumerian language to refer to the Mesopotamian sun god Shamash, whose priests and priestesses were known as shaman, those in service to the light, those who serve Shamash. So there's even some debate as to what that word, where the word even comes from. So my invitation to you is don't get too hung up on like the narrowness of it, the specifics of it. Instead, tuning into particularly in the modern Western world, which we're going to talk about in another episode, what is universal in shamanism? What is universal in life? Because that's really the core of shamanic practice, is the universality of life and the ubiquitous nature of all of aliveness. And that to me is really the most important thing to tune into.
Yeah. And it's okay that it's complicated. It can be really messy. People can get very upset. It is a source of a lot of conversations that need to be had, and a lot of self-reflection that need to be had in order to just be in contemplation of what this means, and the role that we hold, especially as Western people. We're going to talk more about that in a later episode. But let's get back to some core pieces about shamanism that are consistent. So we said animism and we said mediumistic. And one of the things that's consistent is like that mediumistic state. We can say arising through trance, arising through altered consciousness. So there are techniques, practices, plants, all kinds of things that humans do that create an altered consciousness that allow us to more easily communicate with the other realms, to receive beings into our bodies, or to travel to other places. And traveling is a big part of shamanism and some practitioners do more traveling, some practitioners do more receiving. I think is what I've noticed and seen in my mentoring a lot of people who are on this path, and kind of seeing the different ways that people are more naturally inclined, and some people are really great at both, and some people are more one or the other, kind of in the same way that we were talking about the clairs, or the way that we're receiving mediumistic information. We're often have some that we're stronger at, some that we're weaker at, some that was just like, this is the natural way that this happens for me. And then ways that we're expanding that and growing that. And that's why we do shamanic study and mentorship and training.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, there's obviously a lot more ground we can cover, and please tune into both the episodes that we've already recorded, but stay tuned for what is yet to come, because Kat and I are going to talk about modern Western shamanism. How do we be practicing shamanism in the modern Western world? And as multi-lineage people and practitioners, we'll talk about shamanic awakening, intuitive shamanic awakening, shamanic study, etc. So please stay tuned for that. And in the meantime, if you would like to cultivate your shamanic practice, please contact one or both of us. That is something that both Kat and I offer. I do have a free guide that you can download from my website, michellehawk.com. And that free guide is on how to activate your shamanic gifts. So if that's something that you would like to lean into more, then just go download that free guide from my website, michellehawk.com.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, if you're looking to do some work on developing your healership, your channeling and mediumship abilities, I have those programs coming up this year. So reach out.
Mm-hmm.